This story begins in a suburb, on a fairly dark street of a suburb. We are not in Italy or Europe, we are in South America, in Argentina. The suburb is called San Fernando. It's 12.4 miles from the center of Buenos Aires. It's an industrial area, but in addition to being an industrial area, it's also a partially residential area, especially those who work in the industry of the area maybe have built their own house there. In most of the houses, these are workers' houses, but also small executives. Here, our man is just a small executive. He works in the Argentine branch of Mercedes-Benz, the German automotive giant. And he himself speaks excellent German in addition to the Spanish slang spoken in Argentina. Be careful. It's not classic Castilian. It's not what is spoken in Spain, Madrid. No, it's a kind of dialect. Well, this man gets off the bus. It's late evening and he heads home. From the bus stop to his house is about half a kilometer. Obviously, he walks it on the sidewalk. He's just started walking when he hears a voice. A voice that says, "Excuse me, sir, are you Ricardo Clement?" It calls him by name. But there's something strange in the voice of the man who asks him that question. Something strange because it's a voice without an accent, a calm, courteous voice. But it's not an Argentine voice. It doesn't have the Argentine inflection in. Above all, he speaks Castilian, so he's a foreigner, someone from outside. And it's that detail that triggers in the man's mind, this Ricardo Clement, let's keep this name in mind, triggers a small alarm bell. Ricardo Clement decides not to respond, decides to keep walking, but on his way he encounters two other men, sturdy, strong. These don't even say a word to him. They grab him by the shoulders and arms, trying to immobilize him. Ricardo Clement makes an attempt to react, but in the end, he is thrown to the ground. A gag in his mouth, a headgear, a hood on his head, and he is forcibly loaded onto a car covered with a blanket. And off it's a kidnapping. You figured it out by now. But there's something particular about that kidnapping, because it's not the classic kidnapping for extortion purposes. They are not gangsters. It's not even a kidnapping with terrorist aims. After all, who would kidnap a small executive? Rather, they would kidnap the branch manager or the sales manager or someone who might have clear interests. So why kidnap Ricardo Clement? Perhaps because that man's name is not Ricardo Clement. He's not even called Otto Eichmann, which is another made-up name. That man's name isn't even Otto or Adolf Eichmann. No, these are all names he made up over time to cover his real identity. That man's name is Otto Adolf Eichmann. Yes, that very Eichmann, the number one most wanted by various police forces, and especially by the Z Commission of Ludwigsburg, the Nazi hunter Simon Wiesenthal, and the Israeli government. He is the one who was kidnapped that evening on May 11th, 1960 in San Fernando, an industrial suburb of Buenos Aires. He is the number one most wanted in the hunt for Nazis, and this is his story and that of his kidnapping. Otto Adolf Eichmann was born in Silesia, but moved to Austria with his family at a young age. He is the son of a Protestant family, but over the years he will abandon his faith. As mentioned, he grew up in Austria, in the Austria of the First World War, so he experienced part of the events firsthand, even though he was too young to be called to arms. After all, he was born in 1906 and was only 12 years old when the war ended. But the young Eichmann grows up with ideas that prove to be quite dangerous. One of these ideas is faith in the Nazi Party, which from the second half of the 1920s overflowed from Bavaria to touch Austria, and in the early 1930s became a very aggressive formation in the Austrian context. But the young Eichmann doesn't care. He believes in it. Above all, he likes the philosophy behind Nazism. He likes the idea of the Nazi Weltanschauung. He likes the idea of creating a German world. He also likes anti-Semitism. He doesn't like Jews. He doesn't like minorities, and he believes that, yes, the German people have been divided into at least 2 states, if not more, unjustly. In 1932, at the age of 26, Adolf Eichmann joined the Austrian Nazi Party and the SS. The following year, both formations were declared illegal, thus clandestine. Among other things, they will be protagonists of the attempted coup against the Austrian Democratic Republic, with the killing of Chancellor Engelbert Dollfuss. How does Eichmann react? In a very simple way, he flees to Germany, he goes home, one might say. On the other hand, beyond the border, the climate is very different. In 1933, the time is ripe and Hitler is now ready to take power. Within a couple of years, Hitler's power becomes absolute. We have already discussed this with the purge of the Night of the Long Knives, the death from illness of President Hindenburg, the restructuring of the German state in a totalitarian sense. Eichmann, with his SS card in his pocket, begins to make his way in what is one of the vital nodes of the regime, the Reich Sicherheitsamt, the High Office for the Security of the Reich. Behind this pompous acronym hides a repressive apparatus that already in the mid-30s relies on several characters. Eichmann is assigned an office within the Sicherheitsdienst, the security service, SD to be clear. And in the SD in this office, Eichmann deals with Masonic repression. The Masons are seen as a dangerous enemy to the Nazi state, and so Eichmann commits himself. What does he do? On one hand, he compiles the proscription lists, the lists of German Masons to be sent to concentration camps, the list of temples that are assaulted, looted, destroyed, and with the loot, he creates an anti-Masonic exhibition, then garnished with posters with slogans devised by him, an exhibition that has a fair success even among the other poppies of the Nazi Party. So much so that soon more than one among Goering, Himmler, Kaltenbrunner notices the talent of that young man grown up in Austria and decides to reward him, first with promotions until he becomes an Untersturmführer, that is, a lieutenant, and then, at the outbreak of the war, entrusting him with another office, no longer in the SD, but in the Lagerheim Staatspolizei, the Gestapo. It's the D4 office, Jewish race office. What is the goal of this office? Initially, even before the war, there was talk of resettling the Jews elsewhere, that is, driving them out of Germany and forcing them to go somewhere else. These are the years when there is the so-called Aliyah, European Jews, driven by Theodor Herzl's dream, travel to Palestine. They want to create the Jewish hearth. Eichmann himself, just before the outbreak of war in Europe, flew to Cairo under false pretenses to negotiate with an officer from Ghana to see if there was a possible way to exploit this desire of the Jews to establish their own homeland in Palestine, with the will of the Nazi regime to get rid of the Jews. But in the end, nothing comes of it. It's a political issue. The Nazis do not want to encourage the birth of a Jewish state through emigration from their own territories. But let's go back to Eichmann during the war. What does Eichmann do in this Jewish office? Initially, he continues to study the possibilities of migration. There is talk of Uganda. There is especially talk of Madagascar, which is a French domain. After the fall of France at the beginning of the summer of 1940, Madagascar is under the control of the Vichy forces, but it is a very distant colony, and there is almost the intention to take all the Jews, both German and Austrian, Bohemian, and also from conquered Poland, and send them by ship to Madagascar. The problem is that with the Battle of England, which ends with a German defeat, the sea routes are not safe for German ships. The Royal Navy still dominates, especially the oceanic routes, so it is not possible to load the Jews onto ships and send them to Madagascar. Then there is the alternative, but it's the devil's alternative. If you can't expel them, then you have to eliminate them. This is somewhat the summary. And it's the period when the methodical, cold, glacial work of Eichmann is noticed by what is called the Black Eminence of the Nazi regime. His name is Reinhard Heydrich. The Allies have nicknamed him the Butcher of Prague. He is an extremely mysterious man. He is a man who controls all the repressive and police apparatus of the Great German Reich. He has also absorbed the criminal police into the Reichssicherheit, 80. He has dressed the policemen in the black uniform of the SS, leaving out only the Ordnungspolizei, the municipal police. Heydrich is the Reich protector of Bohemia and Moravia. He resides in Prague. There he carries out his massacres, but he does not forget his role as head of the Reich's security office. And for January 20th, 1942, he intends to hold a large meeting between the various departments of the Reich. The organization of this meeting, which takes place on Grosse Wurst, the western suburb of Berlin, is entrusted to Adolf Eichmann, promoted for the occasion to lieutenant colonel. And Eichmann carries out his task in a meticulous, careful, efficient, cold manner. It is he who supports Heydrich in every way during the meeting for every request, from that concerning the sterilization of mixed blood to the revocation of charities and merits for ex-combatants, and above all to the extermination plan. Heydrich will say in the end, those trains that are organized by Colonel Eichmann. Eichmann becomes the man of the trains. It is he who organizes the transit and sorting camps and entrained convoys that carry thousands of people to death each time. Death where? In the gas chambers, and then through the smoke of the crematorium chimneys. Eichmann knows very well what he is doing, and even when Heydrich dies, killed by a commando of blind patriots parachuted by the English in Prague, Heydrich leaves the legacy of that extermination in the hands of his man, Adolf Eichmann, who continues to organize the convoys. Until March 1944, when Eichmann himself is transferred again, this time to Hungary, to Budapest. Hungary had been one of the most docile satellites of the Nazi galaxy, at least until the government of Admiral Miklos Horthy falls, leaving room for a possible revolution, and above all, peace negotiations with the army. Peace negotiations that Hitler does not want to hear about, opting to invade the country of the Magyars. And Eichmann arrives in Budapest in the spring of 1944 at the head of the Gestapo. His task is to make Hungary a huge land without Jews. There are about 1 million Jews in Hungary. Until now, they have avoided persecution. But with Eichmann's arrival, that's no longer the case. They too must end up on the trains. They too must end up at Auschwitz or other camps. As time passes, Eichmann, no fool, realizes the war is now lost. And in the fall of 1944, while the Wehrmacht armies are retreating on the Eastern Front, while the Allies begin to spread in the French plains, Eichmann changes strategy. He sells his services to the Jews to save them, to prevent them from ending up in the camps. He asks them for precious money, anything that can constitute a treasure to exploit later for their own salvation. Eichmann also attempts an impossible meeting with the Allies. He offers the lives of all those Jews in exchange for military supplies, trucks equipped for winter warfare, to be sent to the Eastern Front, where the Wehrmacht is bogged down. Obviously, it's the classic unfeasible proposal. In Christmas of 1944, with the Red Army at the gates, Eichmann flees from Budapest and returns to Berlin. He's going to Berlin because his old office there has an archive containing all the evidence of his actions. The train schedules, the agreements, the transit camps, all the documents drafted by him, signed by him. For nearly 3 months, he methodically destroys them while attempting to avoid detection by his superiors and others. And before Berlin is besieged, Eichmann escapes again, goes to Austria with his family and with all the money and valuables he has stolen in Hungary. Initially, he thinks of hiding somewhere, but he realizes he can't do it. He can't do it because on one hand, the Soviets and on the other, the Anglo-Americans are hunting war criminals. After the discovery of Dachau and Buchenwald, the Americans and English have no more mercy towards the SS and Waffen-SS. As soon as they find them, they kill them on the spot. The Allies are disgusted by what they have discovered in the camps, and there is no mercy for the Nazi criminals. Eichmann makes the first theatrical move by voluntarily presenting himself to the Allies under a fake name. He says his name is Adolf Eichmann and that he is a veteran from Africa. They don't believe him. However, it's clear that initially it's difficult to reconstruct his identity. In the meantime, he is taken into custody, and after a while, he organizes a successful escape with other detainees. So Eichmann escapes again and goes to Lower Saxony. There, with the clandestine funds he had available, he buys a farm. He lives the life of a farmer, but he doesn't feel safe. He doesn't feel safe, especially because he reads in the newspapers the statements made by Rudolf Höss, the former commander of Auschwitz, who at Nuremberg mentioned his name, Eichmann's name. Höss clearly said that there was this officer who organized everything, from the convoys to everything else. And the hunt is on. Eichmann's name ends up at the top of the wanted list. Then Eichmann realizes he has to flee again. And where does he go? He goes south this time. He arrives in South Tyrol in Merano, Italy. Here he makes contacts on one hand with his old comrades, with those from Odessa, the organization of former SS members, which has long been weaving a dense network, the so-called rat line, in the line of rats of mice, to save war criminals. And on the other hand, with a bishop whose name is Alois Sudal, a German bishop with clear Nazi sympathies, who does everything possible to save his compatriots sought by Allied justice. In Merano, Adolf Eichmann ideally dies, and Ricardo, with 2 C's, Clement, is born. Who is Ricardo Clement? He would be a laborer, another local, born in the area, rejected the draft visit, and eager to move to Argentina to start a new life. The first document, which is from the International Red Cross, bears that very name. It's Ricardo Clement. With that, which is a temporary passport, EICMA applies for immigration to Argentina. It takes a while for the documents to be ready, and in the meantime, some official changes his name from Ricardo to Ricardo in Argentina, indeed, without a C. In June 1950, Eichmann, alias Ricardo Clement, by now everyone calls him that, embarks in Genoa. He was a guest of a convent in the city in the previous months while waiting for the paperwork. He lands in Buenos Aires in early July 1950 and for 10 years leads a quiet life away from the clamor. With his fake name so quiet that after having done some small jobs as a worker, as a reclamation worker, and then as a small public accountant, he gets a small managerial position at Mercedes. And having now settled in Argentina, he calls his family, who has never abjured the name Eichmann, the family that had remained in Austria, and who moves to Argentina, building with him a small house in San Fernando, industrial suburb of Buenos Aires, in Avenida Garibaldi, that house where Eichmann lives and where he should return on the evening of May 11th, 1960. But Eichmann may have made a mistake in his calculations. He thinks that no one is looking for him anymore. After all the 40 years are over, the 50 years are ending, and he makes the first of many imprudences or impudences. In Argentina at that time, there is a man, a Dutchman. His name is Willem Sassen. He is a former collaborator from the time of Musser. He also escaped. After all, he risked the guillotine, and Sassen is very active. On one hand, even if he doesn't openly say it, he sells weapons on behalf of the Federal Republic of Germany to various regimes in South America. But officially, Sassen is a journalist and writer. And in that capacity, he interviews Eichmann several times, who, using his real name, gives his version of the events that occurred during the war. These interviews are then also published in American magazines. And from that moment on, the hunt intensifies. In Vienna, there is a man named Simon Wiesenthal. He is known, he is the Nazi hunter. He is, however, a Holocaust survivor. He has decided to dedicate the rest of his life to finding and bringing to justice the murderers of his people. For Simon Wiesenthal, too, Adolf Eichmann is at the top of the wanted list. He has already gathered some evidence that attests to his presence in Buenos Aires in the mid-50s. And there's this name, this Ricardo Clement, that makes him suspicious. But confirming Wiesenthal's ideas, and not just his, happens a fact, a very particular fact. Adolf Eichmann's son, Klaus Eichmann, has kept his surname unchanged. While Adolf the father goes by Ricardo Clement, the son continues to carry the original surname. And Klaus Eichmann, after moving to Argentina after settling into the community of Buenos Aires, meets a girl, a beautiful girl. Her name is Sylvia, and he starts dating this girl. And he gets to know her to the point of confessing his real surname, Eichmann, and praising his father's figure, saying that his father is a war hero, that he is persecuted, that he has done nothing wrong. On the contrary, he has only done his duty as a good soldier. This girl, Sylvia, is the daughter of Lothar Hermann. Who is Lothar Hermann? He too is an immigrant of German origin, Jewish. Sylvia is not Jewish. She is indeed the daughter of a Jew, but her mother is Catholic, so she did not follow her father's religion. She is not Jewish, but it's clear that when her father hears about these strange talks from his daughter's boyfriend, he wants to see things clearly. After all, Lothar Hermann escaped to Argentina after being tortured during the SS war. He almost went blind due to the tortures he suffered. One day, his daughter Sylvia goes to the house of the Clement Eichmann family. The one who opens the door is Ricardo Clement himself, who introduces himself as Ricardo, Klaus's uncle. But when Klaus arrives, he insists that his girlfriend stays to have tea with the family and also with his father, who would be this Ricardo. But how? Wasn't he the uncle? And then why, if the father's name is Clement and not Eichmann? Sylvia Hermann returns home, tells everything to her father, who at that point has a letter written, and sends it to a person named Fritz Bauer. Who is Fritz Bauer? He is a district attorney of the Federal Republic of Germany, and more. He works at the Z Commission. The central office would be the Commission for the Analysis, Study, and Repression of War Crimes during the Nazi period. Name too long, even in German, so the same Germans. They call it Central Office or Commission Z. Based in Facebook, Bauer has long opened a file on the crimes committed by Eichmann and understands that the right opportunity to nail him. The problem is represented by the German police forces. Bauer knows very well that there are several former Nazis in the German police who cover each other, so it doesn't go through official channels. He doesn't send the file to the Ministry of Grace and Justice or to the police to ask them to intervene with Argentina for an extradition. He sends the entire file to Simon Wiesenthal, who enriches the dossier with the information he has and sends it to Tel Aviv into the hands of a man named Isser Harel, director of Mossad, a former fighter of Russian origin, a very determined man, even hot-tempered, a man who, among other things, has a visceral hatred for everything that is German, and especially Nazi. Sarah Rell knows swift action is crucial, as Eichmann has previously escaped multiple times. He escaped when he was called Eichmann. He escaped from Lower Saxony when he was called Ending. Now he has a new identity, and who knows how little time it would take him to make another one. Send a Kidon team to Buenos Aires, a response team, 8 men. This team tails Eichmann for 2 months, gathers elements, and verifies that yes, indeed, that is Ricardo Clement. It's not Ricardo Clement. There is no Ricardo Clement. That man is Adolf Eichmann, and he sets the trap. Israel himself flies with the Israeli delegation to Buenos Aires a few days before the action, which takes place on the evening of May 11th, 1960. The intervention team has already studied the plan, waiting for the arrival of the bus with which Clement, alias Eichmann, usually returns home from work. The first bus is empty and the operation is almost postponed. The target is on the second bus that arrives 30 minutes later. The team begins their operation. The first man is the one who approaches Eichmann and says, "Excuse me," from Mr. Ricardo Clement. Then the other two come into play, 2 former sergeants of the Shabak, the military service. They are the ones who take Eichmann into custody, put a hood on his head, and take him to a safe house, already prepared in Buenos Aires, where Eichmann is held prisoner for 9 days. Sarah Rell smells a second big hit, which explains the delay. They told him that Josef Mengele, the angel of death, the diabolical doctor of Auschwitz, is also in Buenos Aires. But Mengele has actually left. He has escaped from Argentina for several weeks now. He has moved to Paraguay. So after a while, Israel lets go. After 9 days of captivity, Eichmann is subjected to a tranquilizer injection that stuns him. He is dressed in an El Al flight attendant's uniform, the flag carrier, loaded onto a plane that initially stops in Dakar and taken to Tel Aviv. When Prime Minister Ben-Gurion announces the capture of Adolf Eichmann on May 22, 1960, it's a celebration in Israel. In the rest of the world, there are contrasting scenes. In Buenos Aires, an outright anti-Semitic pogrom almost begins. There are associations and neo-Nazi parties that are hunting Jews. There is embarrassment within the American and German secret services, because after all, Germany still has many former war criminals who may be living a second life, perhaps under false names, while the United States knows well that it has scattered many criminals SS torturers in South America now used to help dictatorial regimes against the communist threat. Argentina itself intervenes at the United Nations, asking for the opening of a diplomatic crisis for violation of its own sovereignty. Golda Meir, Minister of Israel, gets away by saying that in reality it was not Israeli agents who acted. It's a lie, but Golda Meir knows very well that the only way in that case is to lie. And she claims that it was a group of contractors, mercenaries, paid by who knows who, perhaps by some wealthy Jew seeking revenge to bring Eichmann to Israel. The lie is eventually accepted by everyone, even though it's clear that it doesn't hold up well. Eichmann is imprisoned in a bunker prison, and from that moment begins what is called the trial of the century, the trial of the monster. Eichmann is taken to the bunker courtroom where the trial is held, locked in a bulletproof cage, dressed not as a prisoner, but in even elegant civilian clothes, and appears as any accountant, any member of the lower bourgeoisie, an ordinary man. This is also how the great writer Anar sees him, who seeing him so common, so subdued, so normal, will write a book, The Banality of Evil, which is a concept. It is a real concept that makes it clear how the monster does not have immediately recognizable features. It is not a superhuman being. It is not something immediately distinguishable. The monster is among us. We can even become the monster at any moment. The monster Adolf Eichmann is a state official who claims to have only obeyed orders and who always behaved with extreme coldness and clarity, despite sending tens, hundreds, thousands, millions of people to their deaths. The earthly life of Adolf Eichmann will end at midnight between May 31 and June 1, 1962, in the prison of Ramallah. Adolf Eichmann has been sentenced to death at the execution site. Despite the appeals, the petitions, even the pleas for mercy, all rejected, the war criminal ascends the gallows. That will be the last capital punishment administered by the state of Israel, which the next day will forever abolish the death penalty after settling accounts with a very painful past and an almost banal evil. Thank you all.